Hello, so today we are gonna talk about entry fragging, the most glamorous role in CS. Or maybe not. Entry fragging is a role where you are the first person to enter in contact with enemies when you and your team decide to take control of a certain part of the map. And so that makes your role and your input especially important. And as always, I like to talk about the goal that is behind the topic I discuss in my videos. So what is the goal behind entry fragging? There are actually 4 goals that you should focus on. First of which is gaining space for your team to play, and this makes you part of an important aspect of CS, which is map control. And to actually seize map control you generally need 2 things. Utility, which will cut the map with smokes, enabling you to take part of map with more ease as the enemies can see you from outside the site. Blind the enemies that are inside the defined area you decided to take control over with flashes, and clear some positions with molotovs. And the second thing you need are bodies. Yes, that's you. And your main job? You are gonna create space so that your team can enter the site without them having to worry about dying right away after entering. And that's because you will be dying first. Usually, but not always. So don't enter the site with the mindset of you being a walking corpse. And how does it help your team to have that little bit of a space? It helps because they can start plays from there. They are already on the site, so they are able to trade each other because there is nothing blocking their vision, like doors or pillars, when entering the site. So it is a very important thing to give your team even a little bit of that space. Your second job is clearing angles. Yes, you can clear some angles with molotovs, but not all of them. Use molotovs for positions that are either inconvenient for your pathing, more on that later, positions that are hard to clear without being shot, or positions where your enemy has an advantage over you, and positions that are far away from you as the enemy can hide behind them and kill somebody from your team without being traded immediately. So you need to clear all of those angles that weren't cleared by molotov. And you better do a good job at it, even if it means that sometimes you will die, because if you don't clear them, there might be enemy hiding behind it, which could end up being a reason for a lost round, not just your death. Your third job is info gathering. If you come to the site and you create space and then you die, you secured info on position of at least 1 enemy, if not more, which will come in handy, because not only it makes it easier to get one of the enemies on the site thanks to his position being revealed, but if your team kills the guy you didn't have info about, and you have the info that other people are outside the site, your team doesn't need to check any other angle. It's basically a checkmate for the guy on the site. And your last job is to get frags. That's why I said you shouldn't be walking in with a mindset of a dead man. What you need is confidence. You should be confident and actively trying to get at least 1 person down with you. Or why the hell not? Try to take the whole site by yourself without dying. Trying to bask in those few moments of glory you get as an entry fragger. But don't forget to play smart, and don't forget that those 3 goals I mentioned before are more important than getting kills. So now that we have more or less covered entry fragging, what is it that you need to be a successful entry fragger? Let's start with you either using or dropping your utility before start running into the site, because you don't want to waste your utility by dying with it. Make that util count, as it is a pretty expensive thing to buy, so either use it to gain space before you get to the position to site execute, use it for site execute, but before you start entering, or drop it to your teammates that can use it for an execute in your place or for a post plant. And the last 2 options depend on what kind of team you have, whether they are cooperative and whatnot, so choose depending on that. Then, when first entering a site or a position, you should always try to get your team to flash you, or flash yourself, because entering a site without getting flashed is basically a death sentence. And the most probable thing to happen is that you will die without being able to gain that space, which is your main objective, so don't forget about flashes, they are important. Now we can get into an actual entry fragging, and you need 3 things: good aim, good crosser placement, and counter strafing, or any kind of movement technique where you will be able to shoot accurately right away. And I think this is pretty self-explanatory, as even though kills are not mandatory for you, it is always good to be able to get some when entering the site, as it makes it a lot easier to conquer site or important positions when you just don't drop dead and get traded, but you actually create a man advantage. And for that you need all three of these because you are running into the position, so you should be able to step and shoot accurately right away when needed. You need a good crosshair placement to clear positions without having to rely on raw aim too much, and you need a good aim to actually hit those shots or any unexpected shot that might occur. Of course, good spraying will be immensely helpful as well. So if you are missing one of these pieces, you should level them up right away. And even if you feel like you are good at these things, it doesn't hurt to get better at them. Second thing you need is pacing. Pacing, in simple words, means how far away are you from your teammates that are entering the site with you. And we don't want your pacing to be too fast, as that would mean that you are leaving your team behind, in which case if you die, your team might not be able to trade you, which in return could result in a man disadvantage if the enemy manages to kill another person from your team before getting traded, in which case trading wouldn't be able to win you the round. Somebody would have to get a double kill, or your team would need to put the site on a lockdown so good that the enemy wouldn't be able to get inside no matter what. But you don't want to be too slow either, because then you might slow down your team and disrupt the entry line. Now, elegantly continuing on with the entry line. An entry line is a concept where after the first person checks the first point of contact, he switches to the next one. But somebody might be just hiding behind and might be waiting before peeking. So to prevent anything bad from happening, after you switch to the next angle in line, the second person behind you will be checking the first one. And after you switch to the third one, the guy behind you switches to the second one and the third guy gets the first one. And you will enter the site covering each other from different positions where the enemy might appear. And after you get to the point where there are more angles than people, you all focus on the most dangerous spot, which are those that the enemy is most likely to pop out of. Of course, you as an entry continue to clear every position because you need to make sure that every position on the site has been cleared. Your teammates are there just to trade you and to minimize the ways that the enemy is able to kill you. But don't rely on this concept too heavily, as your teammates most likely won't have a functioning entry line. So focus more on your pacing. I just think it's a good thing to know this concept. And next in line is pathing. Pathing is basically you going through a certain route when clearing a site. And there are two things that you want from your pathing, and those are to create the most space possible and to clear the most amount of positions possible, both in the least amount of time. Now, the path that you should choose when entering the site is heavily dependent on the utility used by your team, because if you are entering a site on Mirage and the jungle isn't smoked, crossing into the site to clear under palace or default without clearing the jungle first is basically a death sentence. So choose your pathing depending on what utility your team uses, while maximizing the space gain and position clearing. And if you have some utility left, you can try to use it to fill in the gaps left by your team. Disclaimer, you might die doing so because of a bad timing. Now, as to how get better at entry fragging. It's the same old story. You should train your mechanics, so your aim. You should try to make your counter-strafing better. You should also train your crosshair placement on one of those pre-fire maps. I like to use it very much because they have a paths there, so you will clear all the positions that are important to be cleared on the site. So it is a good thing to, once at a time, do all of them. Then, you should of course try to watch pro demos to see what they are doing. And of course, if you are entry fragging a lot, you should watch your own demos to try to see if you fail and how you fail and try to learn from it. But disclaimer, if you are playing solo queue, you can't really be an entry fragger. Like, the only way to be an entry fragger in solo queue is to be a better aimer than other people. Because the important part of entry fragging is the support utility that you will get from your team. Like the smokes, like the flashes that won't blind you, the molotovs, and all of that good stuff. That you won't usually get in solo queue. So it is a little bit of hardship to actually be an entry fragger when you are solo queuing. So that's just the last thing I wanted to say. Okay, So that's all for today's video. Make sure to like the video if you liked it and if it was helpful, and comment on what I should do next. See ya!